So today I'm excited to be joined by Stephanie Rose, who empowers moms to remember their magic through knowing themselves better and live a life that lights them up. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the Real Life Moms podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation.
I know, me too, because I think what you're doing out there is exactly what my podcast is all about. And I really want to have you just start with your own journey because you were, you are a mom and you were in this kind of vortex of motherhood and just try to figure out who am I and what what's really important to me. And you kind of got yourself out of this. I don't want to say hole because we all love being moms. It's not that we don't, but sometimes we lose ourselves, right? I know I lost myself. I know there's a lot of moms out there losing themselves. And just kind of tell us your story, how you just kind of found yourself again.
Yeah, I'm a mom of two boys, and they're now almost 7 and 9. We've reached that threshold where I have to start leveling up. Um, but when my oldest or when my youngest was 1, and I was starting to get more sleep again, and I kind of realized I've checked off all the things of life, marriage, career, house, the kids, I've done the thing. And then now what? All those stepping stones just kind of ended. And that kind of came to me as I was okay, I'm back to work, we're doing this. And it's now what? Who am I?
Yeah, I love that. And okay, so how did you go about doing that? How did you figure out what are the things that are important to you? And how did you keep yourself accountable and show up for yourself?
Well, it started with making a whole bunch of lists. What do I really like? It's as basic as that. What are the little things that I like, either sensory wise, things to do, who I like to be with, where I like to be, breaking it down into all those little nuggets. Then you have a tangible list. And I really recommend writing it out by hand versus typing it out, because there's more of a tangible thing. And then working on what on those lists can I incorporate each day. I have 1,000 candles. I love buying them. It's well, can I burn a candle each day? It's a scent I love. Maybe I bought it at a place that is meaningful. Just doing those little things for myself each day started to add up.
Yeah. So what do you tell moms where to start?
First, you have to take care of yourself, and honor that you have changed from who you were, and becoming a mom is a huge identity shift for you, especially if you're working, then you're juggling so much more than you ever were before. And really give yourself credit for all that you have learned. But I think it starts with knowing yourself better in every aspect of your life, and just growing with that, and then following whatever nudge feels right to do next.
Hmm. I'm hearing a lot of scary moments here, even though what you're saying seems so logical and simple, but you're saying things like knowing yourself, and I feel like that's scary because when you're in it, I think we lose ourselves, right? So getting to know yourself, I think a lot of people, including myself, ends up nothing is coming, nothing is there to write on the paper. Or how do you tap in to yourself and how do you actually believe what you're hearing?
One of the exercises I did is, I'm from the generation where we still wrote letters to ourselves or, to friends when we were younger. And I, have a collection of those still. And I went through those letters and just looked through and tried to see what people said in those, oh, I'm so glad you wrote that. It came at the perfect time. And then that can translate to well, I have good timing. And then, or one of the takeaways for me was man, when you write, it really sounds like, like we're talking on the phone. I feel like you're right here. And it's like, oh, and that was like a 20, 30 year ago. Yeah, a long time ago letter. But pulling out that nugget was helpful because now every time someone says that to me, a variation of that, I know it, I hear it. It doesn't just pass me by. So when you have that collection of things, like, I guess start small. Like, do you make the best apple pie? Or uh, I don't know, like, what are compliments people give you? And maybe just keep a list of those.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is also kind of asking friends, right? I mean, I've done like some work on myself as well. And one of the things in one of the courses was kind of write five, characteristics of yourself. And that was like very difficult. And I hear that it seems like that's what you're kind of saying, like write these characteristics of yourself. But in the class, they were like, and if you don't know, now I want you to now go ask five friends, five characteristics of yourself. And of course, like I turned to like my kids and my husband. I was like, well, that's three people I can ask because they know me well, right? But what they had to say was not at all what I had written. And surprisingly, it felt right. Like it's important, I think, to kind of ask others. But I think, yeah, going back and asking, you're right, other people and seeing those common things that they're saying about you and really sitting with those things if you're having trouble figuring them out yourself, right?
Yeah, they can see something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself, or maybe you don't feel as important because it's just something you do. Like, it's just you. You don't realize how special that is, that not everyone else has that skill or talent. So I did a similar thing, had to ask five friends for, like, why they like me, basically. But and it was like so nerve-wracking to do because, like, you're asking someone, like, these are your friends, but it was really touching to see what they wrote. And then many were curious, like, well, what would you say back? Like, we're all curious about who we are and what we mean to other people. So I think that's a great way to start too.
Yes. And I have to ask, because I'm curious, what was the best thing you heard from your friends about you?
Um, just that, like, I always remember things because I always send birthday cards out to
Mhm.
people. Because again, like, the handwritten stuff is just really important to me. And so it was valuable to me. So I find it important to send it back out into the world. So I think that was the most, like, oh, like, that matters because people don't always say, like, oh, thank you for the card, but just knowing, like, it showed up at just the right time.
Yeah, totally. I think it does matter. And I think that is very special. And I know that there are some tools also that people could use. Like I know I think I read somewhere that you are into things like human design and the Enneagram and things like that to kind of also maybe even get to know ourselves better. Do you recommend those tools?
I like using them as, like, a starting point to start collecting more pieces of evidence about you. So, like, Myers-Briggs is another one because they start to kind of call out some of your personality traits. And, it's not a perfect test, but it helps you start to build awareness of, like, well, there's 16 different personality types according to them. So, oh, like, well, I'm one of 16. So no wonder not everyone is like me, but these are my strengths. Do I see those strengths? How can I use them more? And then Enneagram is great for knowing your fears and motivations. So you can kind of start to pay attention to, like, why you don't want to do something. Like, oh, well, that's that fear coming up, like that from my intrinsic, archetype of the Enneagram. So all of those things help you navigate. And then even more recently into human design, because all of the self knowledge I've collected, it has been like the great aha, like, showing me that there's like it's all connected. Like, there's nothing in my human design that has been surprising that I didn't have an awareness of. It just connected more dots of, like, I didn't realize that's what that was. And they all just give you more words to describe things.
No, I'm not that familiar with human design. Do you mind explaining what exactly that is?
Yes, it is like astrology type based. So it uses your birth date and time. And it is a mix of, or a combination of several of the older, it's like mystical things like your astrology, your natal chart, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and it gives you a design based on what energy you have consistent access to and what you might not have consistent access to and how that like flows through your body.
So, with that, maybe with human design, since it sounds like you're kind of excited about that one,
Yeah.
um, how has that kind of just changed your course of just what you've been doing in your life?
Well, like it's not a personality test like the other ones because this is supposed to be more based on how you were born and designed to be, but it gave an explanation of like my energy type and how like it's best if I like engage with people based on your aura. And like it sounds totally woo. Like
Mhm.
if you're not into this, you're like, okay. Um, and that's where having that whole background of knowing myself. So when I read everything I've learned, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. So starting with just knowing like what your energy type is and how like I'm a projector, so it means I need to like wait for the invitation, which I translate to like waiting for interest. Like when I get so excited about something, I will just pour out everything. But if someone's not ready to receive that information, they're not going to get it, and then I will feel bad like I just wasted my time. They didn't even care about what I said. And so
Mm.
it's just knowing like, okay, like don't waste your energy on people who aren't interested. Um, and so, yeah, even if you're not interested in it for your actual design, it gave me like so much language to notice like, oh, that's how I show up best. Those have been the times I've been the most successful with sharing my message.
Mhm. Yeah, I love woo woo, so you're in good
Okay.
company.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. And it sounds fascinating, the actual reading of the energy and knowing what yours is. Yeah, I like that. I'm curious to find out what mine is. I'll have to do one of those. Do
Yeah.
they have a test online?
Yes, there's many people who give you a free body graph and give you like the high level stuff, but like it even will tell you like what like fears you might have or what pressures you might feel. And it's
Mhm.
like the things that are defined for me that I have consistent access to. Yes. Every
Mhm.
one of them is a yes. So it's, I just wouldn't have named it like that. Like it puts them, it gives some like buckets and clarity to like, I don't have time to sit on a mountaintop and like contemplate my existence and all of my past interactions. So it's like a real shortcut to tuning into that.
Yeah, I like those types of things because you're right. When you take one of those tests, whether it's the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or this human design, I feel like when you read the description after you've taken the test and you're like, oh yes, that's me, it kind of just gives you this, first of all, it feels like a almost like a validation of who you are. And it once again puts that language to it. So I can definitely relate to that. I think that's really helpful, especially with people who are kind of trying to figure out who they are. It's kind of a little bit of a shortcut to getting
Yeah.
some information. You still have to
It
do the work though.
organizes, oh yeah, like it just organizes the information maybe into like some digestible bites that you can then go get curious about.
Mhm. So, what has been kind of the most impactful thing for you in your journey of just kind of finding who you are using all these tools? What has been the most impactful thing that you're doing kind of on a day-to-day basis?
I'd say the thing that helped the most, that really brought the most clarity, was when I did the artist's way. Julia Cameron talks about the art morning pages. And so that's like free form stream of consciousness journaling. And I had never journaled like that before. I always thought it was more like diary type, like these are the details of the day, but never getting into like how I felt, or maybe like what nuggets I was picking up, or like making connections. It was just very like diary like. And so doing the journaling has always been so helpful, because if even if it's not what goes on the page, it frees your mind. Like as moms, we have so many things running through our brains. And if you have your work life, your home life, anything you're trying to do for your personal life, plus like all the adulting tasks you have to do, like that's always running as like ticker tape through your head. So taking the time to journal, and with the Artist's Way format of like, it's just stream of consciousness. It's just whatever comes out, it frees up space in your brain, and it calms that conversation of everything that's running through. And then you can have more space to like let those thoughts and connections come through, and maybe notice like, oh, like, well, I wrote about that last week or a month ago. Like it slows you down enough to notice things.
I love that. So you do this in the morning, is that correct? The kind of first thing in the morning?
I'm more of a night owl, so some of
Oh.
them are like night owl pages.
That's fine. Yeah. So you do it more in the evening, and it's just not a specific question or thing. It's just free writing whatever's in your head. Is that what it is?
Yeah, like just her strategy is to write 3 pages longhand, and I don't always get there, but it's her theory is like on the 3rd page is when you're finally like getting to the point of the conversation with yourself. And so I've done it enough that I don't always need to get that far, but just not being afraid to just say like, I need to figure some stuff out. I don't know what it's about. This happened today. Maybe this, like, just like whatever rambling needs to come out. And then you start to know what threads you need to pull on in yourself. Like I discovered that like I would say, I don't know, when I really did know. I just didn't want to face it. And so now like that's something I can see in myself, and I don't let myself off if I'm writing or even just talking about something. Like, no, you do know what is that fear, and I can understand now like where my fears maybe come from, and I can lean into that like, oh, well, because it would disturb someone's peace. So someone might get upset with me if I do that. So that's where if I'm trying to like work through a specific thing, I might use that as like a journey, not a specific prompt. But other times it's just, I needed to be here in the page today, and this is what's going on, and this is how I feel, and just keep writing until there's nothing left.
Yeah, it's so interesting. First of all, I find writing a little bit vulnerable because when it's written down, I don't know, someone could see it, like
Oh yeah.
someone picks it up, right? Like they can see it. So it is a little fearful to like be so honest on paper. Do you have that problem?
Oh yeah. The self-censor still kicks in at times. Like, even though no one's gonna read it, no one's gonna like, part of me is like, oh my gosh, what if my kids read this in like 50 years and they go like, well, it made me who I am, and it let me be a better mom to them and show up as my best self. So I kind of have to get over it,
Mhm.
and really like, you're not that interesting to other people, I guess.
Well, and also I guess it's also like just saying this is me, all of me, good, bad, ugly, right? And being okay with that even on the paper so that you can kind of step into that in real life too.
Yeah.
Right. I think the other thing that you're saying, which like I've experienced, I haven't done a lot of journaling, and you're inspiring me to try this. But I have been in like even courses and things where it's like, okay, we're going to journal for 5 minutes about this, right? And you're like, okay. And the first minute you're writing something, and then it's like, now it's quiet. I have to do more. Right. And what comes out after that is what's really the magic, right? It's not that superficial layer, but as
Yeah.
you have to really sit there and let more flow, it's like all of a sudden it's like, it's freeing. There's so much that comes up that you had no idea. So I do recommend maybe setting a timer or something so you don't just stop in that minute and say, okay, I journaled, but
Yeah.
really allowing it to flow because there's so much underlying that.
And if it's intimidating to start, like start with one sentence. And then once you get like build consistency, then push yourself for more. Or like once a week, you'll go for 5 minutes. Like if you decide what counts, and if just carrying your journal with you each day or, counts, then you're doing something more than like having it shoved in your drawer and you don't even give yourself the opportunity to write in it. Right. And then like, okay, well, I carried it with me every day this week. I'm going to write in it one of these days. Like, and just build slowly and don't beat yourself up for not following through. Like, just set a very low threshold based on your capacity that you have. Because like, you are a busy mom, you have a lot going on, but you matter and you need to show up for yourself.
So true. And how important do you feel it is to go back and read what you've written?
I generally don't at all.
Okay.
And that's part of like the morning pages gave that permission too. Like, this isn't to go back and look at.
What I hear you saying permission, give yourself permission. Can you expand on that a little bit just in general? Like, what should we be giving ourselves permission for?
I mean, permission to be you. Like to make up your own rules about stuff. Like, a lot of women are people pleasers. And so, we want to be the good girls. We want to like follow the rules. We want to, you know, like that's how we get esteem and feel like we belong, if we're like following the rules. And so some of those don't really serve us, or they're made up, or there's a different way to interpret them, right? Like you can be a good girl and still like take care of yourself and feel like you're made to do that. Like, yeah, I'm going to go for that job. I want to run that race. I want to like, there's all these things that you can do, but you might hold yourself back saying like, oh, I could never do that. Like, the version of yourself that you think you are could never do that. Like, well, is that a true version? Is that true? Like, is that really you? And so it's kind of asking some questions of like, is there a version of me that does? And then you kind of have like, because your self-talk is what rules your actions. And so if that jerk in your head is saying like, oh, you couldn't do that, why even try, look at what happened when that person did it, like, then you don't even try. So you kind of have to give yourself like the literal permission to say, I'm going to pursue this, I'm going to give it a shot. Like, I'm the type of person who does this, or I'm the type of person who thinks about doing that. And you like, because people love like the I am affirmations, but sometimes that's really bold to like, because that's not an identity you have yet.
Mhm.
Like if even what's like, I am the best mom. Well, there are plenty of days where I am not the best mom. And so then I can like, then that self-talk can kick in and be like, oh, like there you go again, like not being the best. Um, and then you keep self-sabotaging. But if you have more of the mantra, like, I am the type of person who is always working toward being a mom my kids love, or like, you can rephrase those affirmations to make it seem like you really could be that type of person. And then you can keep taking action toward it versus setting some goal that's like, yes, you'll get there, but if it's too high for where you believe you are, it it's going to take a lot more capacity and tenacity and than than maybe you have access to on a daily basis.
Hmm. Yeah, because I feel like there's that self-talk is so difficult, right? It's this conscious like mind that just says, no, you can't do this, right? But I feel like sometimes I want to just follow that 2 a.m. voice, right? Like you go to bed and you have this like amazing idea in the middle of the night, right? And for some reason it seems super logical. It could be like, I fly. I mean, it could be anything super crazy. And then you wake up and you're like, I can't fly. You like all of a sudden these like voices come into your head.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do we get to listen to that more excited 2 a.m. voice that says you can do something? And how do you just quiet down that other voice that tells you all those stories that you always hear or that you can't do something?
Well, I think you got to start catching yourself in that self-talk. And that's where the journaling was a helpful like start, because like you can like see things on the page and it's like, would you really like say those things to a friend if they were trying to do these things? Like, no. So it was just a good way to start catching myself, and it gave me the space to kind of like observe myself a little bit more and just kind of see like I'm just a person experiencing life, and like the inner knowing of me is kind of like, I mean, it's within you, but you can think of it as like kind of observing your life. And like, what would you tell that person who has that like 2 a.m. excited idea? Like, what made you so excited about it? And well, is there something you could do today? Like, could you just like read an article about it? Could you ask a friend about it? Like, you don't have to like commit to doing it, but you can follow the curiosity and just see where it goes. Because maybe it's not that, but you had to have that idea to get you curious enough to actually get you to the idea of what you really want to do. But you'd never believe it if that idea came first.
Right, right. This was maybe a stepping stone you needed to have. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, I think also it's okay if it doesn't work. It's okay if you didn't make it fully. Like, big deal. You at least tried and know that versus always wondering, right?
And that's another self-talk thing. Like, you can reframe it as like, not that you failed. It's this that, well, I tried something and I learned this, and that actually led to that. And that's actually where I want to go. And so, and if you know the human design, like my profile lines, like I have a lot of experimenting in it. Like I am meant to try and see what happens. Like that is how I navigate life. And kind of seeing that, it's like, oh, like, how many different jobs did I have like through high school and college? Why did I ever even think, like, how did I even think of becoming like I was a site crew person on a construction site? Like, what 18-year-old girl thought like it made sense in the moment, but like I've had all these different experiences and they've all like taught me something. And if I have that energy about it and I tell myself that story about it, that's way better than like, oh, well, you failed at this and you failed at that and you never saw that through. Like, that's a total different energetic of self-talk.
I love that. I love that. I mean, just reframing the story, change the mindset. And I think of always throwing up different sticky balls and see what sticks. Like, you never know. My husband will always say, "Oh, you're gonna try this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna throw up a ball. I'll see if it sticks. Let's just see. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Then I'll try something else." And he'll even ask me, like, "Well, how do you know how to do that?" And my answer is always like, I don't. I'm just going to try it and then I'm going to figure out what's next. So it's fun to do that too because you don't know where it goes. And this is coming from somebody who needed to know all the steps, needed to plan all the steps. But what I realized when I planned all the steps, it didn't work out the same way anyway. And I always had to be flexible and change anyway. So why not just start out not knowing the steps anyway and just
Yeah.
being inspired and doing something?
Yeah. Like, because I raised bees for a while. I took this year off, and people are like, okay. And like, Yeah, I started with my whole suite of knowledge was from what I remembered from a Mr. Rogers episode when I was a kid. Like, it's like, well, Mr. McFeely delivered the bees. Like, and I saw how they loaded him in the hive. Like, I can do this. I mean, it just, I don't know, like, it's just different stories you tell yourself instead of like, no, I have to know everything. I have to like take all these classes. And then you've done all this stuff, but you haven't ever done the thing that maybe you don't even like. But you've invested all this time in preparing and now you don't even like it. And again, you could reframe it, that wasn't a waste because that made you feel prepared, but like just you have to figure out how you best navigate life. And maybe that over preparing comes from an anxiety or a fear that you have that you could like embrace and let go of.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, you would never, if you wait for the perfect everything and everything's set up, you would never have honey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully, you have honey.
Yes. Yeah. We have an abundance of honey.
Awesome. So, one question I have, because I know I do this, is like, how do you not revert back? So you've got these great habits, you're journaling, you're finding yourself, you're moving forward, but how do you not kind of revert back? It's so easy to get sucked back in.
It is. Um, I think you just have to like recognize that you're getting stuck again and find something that excites you to try again, or like maybe try a different direction, or like what made you stop? Like if you didn't love it that much, then it's really easy to stop. But now like there's so many things that I love and I'm so passionate about. Like you couldn't stop me. Like
Mhm.
even if I wasn't getting paid to do it, I'd do it anyway. So maybe you just haven't found the thing or the right angle for it, and or the right way, like the right practice for you. So like,
Yes,
just keep trying.
totally. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It's like when you find that thing that totally aligns with your core, with your true self, with your passion, you're right. You're going to do it anyway, even if you don't get paid. And you're going to
Yeah.
be in love with it and you're going to feel good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think reevaluating, maybe answering my own question is like reevaluating, is this really the right thing?
Yeah. Like, are you doing it truly for you or because someone else thinks you should, or you're trying to please someone else, or you don't see another way? Like, I don't know. There's always something to learn. So no matter where you're at, if you can give yourself some perspective, like, kind of stand back. Like if you're on a journey and you get lost in the woods, like, well, what do? Like, well, you look for landmarks, you try to reorient yourself to get back to a known place, or um, like get out to a view so like you can orient yourself. So like if you start to feel lost or stuck and like what you're doing isn't working, like, well, take that time to pause and reorient, reground yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And taking that time to pause and know that that's okay to also step away from the duties of the day to day, the kids, the work, and just having some quiet time, whether that's a walk or meditation or whatever. Yeah. Like you said, give yourself permission to know that that's okay to do.
Yeah, like that is part of it. Like you can't like live a life you love if you don't like pause and reorient and check in with yourself and just give yourself the rest you need. So, I mean, if you're trying to start somewhere, start with getting a little bit more sleep. Stop the sleep sabotage. Um, like I still battle with it because it's like there's so much more I want to do. There's not enough time, but not getting enough sleep is not the answer. And I'm sure my husband is probably laughing really hard at the advice that I need to take so badly for myself.
We usually give the advice we need, right?
Yes. So like, but it's just like when I can have the perspective and notice like I'm staying up too late, like way, way too late. because I'm needing that time. Like, okay, I'm needing time alone. How can I get time alone that doesn't make me a disaster the next day? Even if it is like, that's why I have my daily walk. That's why, like I know like sometimes I just need to go lay down for just 10 minutes. It's not even to sleep, it's just to like get equilibrium in my body and my energy. And then I can like reboot and come back. And then the whole day's not ruined, right? Instead of like forcing your way through and not getting anything done well, take that time to rest and step away. Like,
Yeah, I think that's great. You're right. Not getting anything done well because you're overwhelmed, exhausted, and not aligned with yourself, and just literally giving yourself an hour, 10 minutes, whatever it is that would change that whole scenario is definitely worth it. And I think
yeah,
that's a great reminder is that by giving yourself time, you're going to be more there for your family.
yeah.
So, where can listeners find you? Because you do a lot and you have so many great resources.
I show up weekly in my newsletter, and I publish journal entries on my website. And then I am figuring out my relationship with Instagram on how much I like to show up there. So it's something I'm knowing about myself of like, I only want to show up there when it's fun and aligned and the message is coming through. I don't want to show up in a forced way. So when I show up there, it's truly me.
So, and if you don't mind, just tell us what your website is so people can visit it.
Yep, it is fireflyscout.com and on Instagram at Firefly Scout. And if you're more of a LinkedIn person, I do share on LinkedIn.
So, is there anything else you want moms that are listening to this that really want to get inspired from this to know?
I want everyone to know that they came here with a purpose. Like your being came here to do something. And it doesn't have to be that you're like rich and famous or like make an impact on the whole world, but you came here to make an impact in this world. And it could be the community that you're in, the job that you do, the family you raise, like it's all of those things. And you want to be your best self and share your gifts and tap into them, because then it will be so much more easeful for everyone to navigate life when like you're bringing everything you have to the table.
That's beautiful. And I love that. So, thank you for coming on our show and just sharing just such nuggets of wisdom and just your overall calm, peaceful demeanor. It's just so relaxing just to even talk to you. So, thank you. Thank you for just being here and for showing up for other moms and for yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I loved our conversation.